The Mind Needle. My wife's funeral was 3 days ago. Not a lot of people showed up, at least much less than expected. The ceremony included me, a pastor, and around 20 other people, most of whom were my family and friends. Her family, at least the few I knew about, lived so far away they couldn't make it in time. Melanie, my late wife, didn't really have much contact with anyone except me and my friends. And knowing what her job was, it wasn't a mystery why no colleagues showed up. I cried. A lot. The tears always hit me wave-like, as if the memory of the last months and the sudden discovery of her were rammed into my head like a needle during a lobotomy. Seeing her laying in the wooden coffin, the question of what happened to her since her disappearance 8 months ago became even more haunting. She had the same face as the woman I was married to, but she seemed to have aged years upon years. It is hard to write down all those thoughts that shoot through my mind. But I will try my best to keep it in order and clear. Anyways, I apologize for occasional ramblings. Looking at the pictures I took of her with my phone while we were on our last dinner date, she had dark hair that reached down to her shoulder, big blue eyes that sometimes seemed to look right into your soul. At least they caught mine when I first met her. She had an athletic build, fit, but not too skinny to the point that she looked unhealthy. The Melanie I had to identify at the morgue wasn't like that. She was so sickly, her skin gray, her lips blue. She was so thin, her ribs seemed to force themselves out of her wrinkled skin like dull knives trying to pierce rough leather. Her hair was longer and messy. Her teeth were shades of yellow and brown, and her nails were long like claws. Her body was found in a ditch on a roadside in the middle of nowhere. The police said she likely was thrown out of a passing vehicle, or her body was mangled by the force of the impact on the ground. I refused to look at the pictures taken on the scene. The description of how her limbs were placed was already enough for me. I wonder if seeing it would ease the pain of imagining it, though. It wasn't the collision with the ground that killed her. She was dead before that. They didn't exactly know for how long, but it wasn't longer than a day or two. In the state she was in, I don't even want to imagine what she had been through. For nearly a year she was gone. She had marks all over her body that looked like they came by chains and cuffs. In her chest was the deep wound of a knife. She was fatally stabbed in the heart. A new police investigation began, and I was asked a bunch of questions. It was just the same as when she disappeared. Of course, the first person they look at is the husband. To clarify it, no, I had no involvement with the disappearance or the death of my wife. At first they wouldn't believe it. It was usual for her to sometimes be gone for a few days, as she worked for the government. A few questions I asked again and again during the first and now second investigation were, what part of the government did Melanie work for? What was her type of work? How come you have been married for nearly a year even though you didn't know what she did most of the time? I understood their frustration with my lack of answers. It was true. I had no idea what she did during those long trips she took. All she ever told me was that she worked as a project manager for the military. She told me her work was secret, but she had some stuff that proved her association with the army. A badge she had hidden in the drawer next to our bed, and some medals. It was enough for me to believe her. Of course, it made some evenings we spent together at the dinner table a bit awkward. While I told about my day, how I had to deal with strange customers and my colleagues, she listened, reacted, but never shared much from her. The most I got was the project is going great or we're making progress. I didn't ask what project, I didn't ask who was we. We kissed and watched a movie cuddling on the couch. I got used to it easily. I knew it wasn't a parallel life or anything. It was an acceptable secret, for which the price was a marriage with a great woman that made my everyday light up, no matter how rainy it was. When she was found a few days ago, the questions began anew. I only had the same answers for them. But a few ones were new. What did you do during the last months? If we count the endless benders of drinking myself to sleep alone in my apartment, the walks I took in the middle of the night to look for her everywhere, or the countless fights I picked with people much bigger than me while getting drunk in shady bars, I didn't really have time for much else. My rent was 3 months past due. The mountain of police reports for vandalism and fights and the loss of my driver's license after my second crash made it impossible to keep someone as a prisoner anywhere. The last question still haunts me, and will probably do so forever. Did you know she was pregnant? No, I didn't know that. As mentioned before, her funeral was small. Now thinking about it, I find it weird that someone working for the army didn't get a proper funeral like a fallen soldier does. It was then that I doubted the things she told me over the last few years. If she really worked for the government, I even came up with the idea that she just ran away or something like that. Now I don't have those doubts anymore. I had a hard time seeing anything through my tears when her coffin was lowered into the ground. I remember seeing glimpses of someone standing far behind the rest of the small crowd. So far behind that from the point I was standing at, the person wasn't more than a black dot standing between some gravestones in the distance. It maybe could have been someone visiting past loved ones, but even with so much space between us, I saw him looking right at me. No idea what the appeal was to look at people crying for their lost loved ones. I didn't think about it right then. My brother who drove me home after the funeral. He was kind enough to wait until it was nearly dark to grab my shoulder and take me away from Melanie's grave. He asked if I wanted to spend a few nights at his place, but I refused. I appreciated the offer, but between looking at the hung-up pictures of my late wife hanging on the walls, or my niece and nephew playing in their living room days after discovering Melanie was pregnant, the choice was easy. The silence in our home was even more deafening than when she first disappeared. Now, there were no phone calls, no messages, nothing, until this morning. I had spent days in total silence. The only sound that blurred through the walls were my own random sobs or cries. I go to sleep knowing I will dream of her. I wake up knowing she will be on my mind all day. I drink to numb it. Occasionally, I remember her smile, her laugh, and her real laugh when she found something truly funny, and not just when I said something idiotic. For anyone else, all that could be heard was me, but I heard her everywhere. Only her, until someone knocked on my door. To understand what and why I am writing all this here, what I will describe now just happened moments ago. I want to share as much information about those events as I can, because I have no other place where I can share them and not look like a maniac. A psychologist would send me to a nut house, and the police would probably do the same if I told anyone in person, so here is what happened. A big part of me didn't want to answer the door. I hadn't showered in days, nor had I shaved my face or brushed my teeth. The dark rings under my eyes made me look like a zombie, and I smelled of booze. It was then that I heard another knock, then fast steps leaving my place and disappearing in the distance. Curiosity got the best of me, and the fact I didn't need to interact with anyone made me take a look outside. There was a large package right in front of me. I asked myself if I had ordered something big before all this happened, but that wasn't the case. The package wasn't closed well, just a single piece of tape closed the thing half-heartedly. I couldn't make out where the stranger went, there was no sight of anyone out here. I took the box inside, it was so heavy I had to drag it. Ripping off the tape, I looked inside without thinking. I believed maybe it was a gift from friends or family. There was this thing, it looked like a helmet of some sort. It had the shape of a small pyramid, and at the bottom there was a hole big enough to fit your head inside. It was dark black with a bunch of wires hanging around it. The thing weighed at least 15 pounds. On the top of it, there was a cylinder-shaped hole that was a few inches deep. 6 of those cylinders laid in the box, long codes were written on them. Combinations of about 20 numbers and letters each. Under all of it was a last item, a notebook. I put the helmet thing and the cylinders in front of me and opened the first page of the notebook. A letter fell out of it. Unfolding it revealed a long text written on a computer. Contrary to the notebook, that was all written in poor, seemingly rushed handwriting, here is what was written in the letter. Sir, it is against the advice of my colleagues and superiors that I send you this package. But following the events of the last few months and the promises I made, I feel obligated to answer the many questions you must be asking yourself. Now, the matter at hand is complicated to say the least, which is why, instead of over-explaining the situation, I will give you a step-by-step plan of action to navigate through the confusing and dangerous items found in the box. The machine is used like a helmet, and the cylinders have to be put in following a specific order. The order of the cylinders and all other important information is written down in the notebook. I am aware that the circumstances surrounding Melanie's death are unexplainable to you at this moment. And honestly, the explanation won't make it easier to understand or overcome her loss. She was important to all of us, and it is on her behalf that I entrust you with this dangerous technology. As you progress through the following events, write down the experiences immediately after experiencing them, the way our subject did in the notebook. It will help navigate through the minefield that are the cylinders. And please, on behalf of our and your safety, destroy all contents of the box once you are done with them. First, burn this letter after reading it. This is for your own safety. My bosses are eager to silence even whispers telling of their sins. I am sorry for your loss. May this bring a glimpse of closure to the pain you endure. At first, I hesitated to actually burn it, but after witnessing the following writings and images, I did so without hesitation, including the first cylinder. And you will understand why very soon. I'm writing this down immediately after witnessing it, and before I even consider continuing this, I will take a break for at least a few days. Opening the notebook, it took me a while to get used to the subject's handwriting. It seemed rushed and chaotic, but after a couple of pages, I could decipher the following. How do I start this? They told me to just write down my thoughts without making it too complicated, so I'll just do that. Crazy how fast life changes, and how easy it is to write properly when you don't drink for a few weeks. I was sitting on this bench next to the bus stop when this guy approached me with an envelope. First I thought this was a joke. During my time working as a policeman, I learned the difference between the secret agent movie and the real thing. The guy wore glasses and a dark jacket, a man I later got to know as Tom. He's a nice guy. Doesn't talk much, but that's expected from a government agent that works on super secret stuff. They are always the quiet type, well, most of them anyway. That nerve-bending witch of a project leader Melanie. Or the way she likes to be addressed supervisor, or M. She's the opposite of quiet, but one thing after another. To keep it short, I never would have thought any government agency would want me in their ranks after being thrown out barely avoiding jail. Especially not after every news station in the state had shown my face on TV, but apparently, and I am using their choice of words here, I was exactly what they were looking for. The letter given to me was just a small note written on a ripped piece of paper. On it were coordinates to what seemed to be a harbor a few miles from here. I spent the next few days contemplating if I wanted to go there or not, but then I thought, why not? I mean, it would be something different from the usual routine of doing basically nothing all day. So I took the bus to the closest stop from the location and made my way past the fences enclosing a colorful landscape of slowly rusting shipment containers. At some point there came a walkway, though the woods. It was clear day. If it wouldn't have been, I would have turned around and gone back to town instead of going in. There were signs of car tires on the ground. But they didn't expose the dirt under the green grass yet. Little traffic meant little chances of being found. But honestly, who would look for me anyway? About a 20-minute walk and I felt like I left the world behind. It had been so long that I spent a moment without traffic noises, sirens, and loud talking, that it felt otherworldly to just hear the harmonic sounds of leaves in the wind and birds chirping all around. Until, of course, the known sound of steps and yelling interrupted that peace. What are you doing here? The voice came from behind me. Turn around. The guy was in military uniform, holding a rifle in my direction. I always imagined I would react all cool and lightheaded in such a situation, but I nearly shit myself. I told him my name and explained how I found myself in that situation. And yes, I stuttered through the whole thing. Try not to when someone holds a firing iron that could kill a grown elephant towards you. He wanted to see the note, so I reached for it while trembling. Without breaking eye contact, he reached towards the little radio on his shoulder. A woman's voice told him to bring me to the lab. I guess it was at that point where the option of leaving again wasn't an option anymore. We just kept following the tire tracks until we reached this strange building. From outside, it looked abandoned. Just the two big SUVs out front gave sign that the place wasn't completely empty. Following the side of the rounded out sidewall, we reached a small door. The soldier told me to open it. He didn't hold the gun towards me, but with both hands on it, I knew he was ready at all times to rain bullets. I followed his orders and stepped in. Shockingly, the place looked cleaned up. A bit dusty, yeah. I hadn't seen many job listings for secret military lab janitors lately. And thinking that the soldiers had to do that job, I understood his grumpy mood. Sorry, I ramble when I am nervous. The humor helps me to handle the shit I witness. I'd say that's a side effect from being a cop for many years. Anyway, we passed a few rooms. Some had their doors open, others didn't, but I was sure they were all empty. No lights on, no sounds or anything except the AC. Though only other sound besides our footsteps was the soldier telling me which direction to go. I had to take a left here and a right there, but it wasn't like a maze. It was then that I heard something. Voices. There was a woman talking, or should I say, lecturing others. Once in the room, the attention was fully on me. There were 4 people. A woman, some lab guy with glasses, another soldier, and some dude who looked unfit for this group, just like me. The woman presented herself as Melanie, and let me tell you, she was something else. I'll try my best to recall the exact conversation. Woman, is this the guy? He doesn't look like that in the file. Guy with glasses, no, it's him. It took me a while to identify him, but it's definitely Mr. Isaacs. Woman, has anyone followed you, or has anyone been informed about your whereabouts? She asked with a stern, commanding look on her face. Me, Pem. No, I immediately saw how stupid that answer sounded. In a secret room with secretive people, of which 2 are armed with rifles. If you are in my situation, I dare you to answer with a yes. Woman, have you searched him? She asked the soldier who brought me here. He nodded no. Then do it. And once you are done, search the outside for anyone who could have followed him. Guy with glasses, Melanie, we chose him for a reason. He is trustworthy, and also, please no offense, I haven't detected any close contact between him and anyone that could be seen as close. Me, what the hell does that mean? Asshole with glasses, it means. Melanie, it means there will be no missing posters of you in case you stay here longer. It sounded like a threat, even if said so casually. Me, what the hell is going on? What do you want from me? The tension in the room built up. Both soldiers stared at Melanie before she sent the one searching me away. Guy with glasses, sir, I know this seems strange, but please know that you are in no danger. It is clear the secrecy around the latest events can be frustrating, but please understand, we work in secrecy. Knowing your professional background, we saw you as a fitting asset to this project. It took a few moments of silence to evaluate the situation. I knew I couldn't just leave, and the machine gun I saw earlier made it clear that protesting wasn't a smart idea. Me, I'm listening. They sat me down at a table with them. She stayed up while the glasses guy sat with me. Melanie ordered the second soldier to bring out the other normal guy, who to this point hadn't said a word. As expected, they really did their research on me. The glasses guy presented himself as Victor. That he was something like an assistant to the project supervisor who only gave her first name, Melanie. Victor really was the typical science teacher nerd you'd expect. Just looking at him, I saw a lack of social life or self-care. We were similar, except that he didn't smell of cigarettes. Melanie, she was different. A professional career woman who always had a witty answer if you didn't show the deserved respect for her authority. She looked good though, even while leaned against the table with her arms crossed and an annoyed look on her face. They talked about my career in the police force and gave me this strange document with a Rorschach test and morality questions on it. I chuckled at it, as it reminded me of those nutjob police exams. Now I realize that I am rushing through those first events. The reason is that even for me, those memories are pushed back by the experience I made with this godforsaken machine. The tests took about an hour. Victor asked questions about hypothetical situations in which you choose between greater and lesser evils. Then Melanie took over. What made you assist your old partner to kill those people? Calling them people already didn't sit quite well with me. But the truth was, I had no answer, at least none that I could form into words. Every second of silence was made longer through her stares. I chose my words carefully. In that moment, it felt right. And how does it feel now? We reward honesty with honesty. Give us the answer, and we will answer your question. I don't regret it, but I wouldn't do it again. We all knew that this answer didn't mean much. But in my stubbornness, it was a topic that I wanted to avoid. The goal of those questions isn't only the evaluation of your mental state. For the most part, your honesty is appreciated by the person in front of you. She looked at the other guy, who was still silent. As you will get to know him better than anyone else could. Please, by the love of God, what is going on? Seeing my desperation, she ordered the soldier to bring in a box. She took out these helmet things, triangular-shaped spikes attached to each other with cables. A cylindric object stuck out of one of them. This is a mind needle, she said. You'll use it to scratch off a black mass sticking to his hippocampus. What the? Before I could properly react, the guy reached out his arm to give me a handshake. I'm Alex. I hesitated a bit before reaching out myself. I know this is crazy. And really, if hadn't seen it myself, I'd have the same look on my face. His sincerity reassured me a bit. The guy really seemed hopeful for whatever was coming. I will give you the information necessary for your first try. After that, depending on your choice to continue the project or not, you will be given more. But for now, Brandon, neither this place nor these people exist. The Mind Needle is a machine programmed to 3D render the 3 layers of the mind. You will be thrown into those layers and will look for anomalies. You will then follow those anomalies to the center of the mind, where you will eliminate the source of the pain. What anomaly? What source of pain? The first layer is a street. There will be people and houses passing by, but between them, you will find someone who doesn't fit into the rest. You follow that person the whole time. The deeper you go, the more the invaded mind will recognize you as an intruder and try to stop you, said Melanie. What am I supposed to do? I don't understand why I should go in there. My voice was a bit panicky at this point. Alex answered, have you heard of the Seaside Dance Festival last year? You mean the one where those people died? I was there, with my girlfriend. She didn't make it. We were trampled by the people fleeing from the fire. I was the only one of us to stand up afterwards. He paused. Please help me to get this out of my head. I wake up and I see her. I go to sleep and I dream of her. It never stops. Please help me. At the time I didn't ask myself why the government was interested in helping a random guy over his late girlfriend. The tone in his voice was the same I had when my wife left me, and if I could help a man get over this kind of pain, then why not at least try? I'll help you. A little later they had already placed the machine on his head and were about to do the same with me. When you find the source, kill it, find a way, and if you feel get trapped, let it kill you. You will then come back here. What? Why? You don't want to be trapped in another person's mind. Do whatever it takes. Cylinder 1.3057 for 173.033. The moment I was put on the helmet, a total darkness surrounded me. It seemed to have cut off all my senses. Even the newest VR model on the market couldn't reach this level of immersion. Out of the deafening darkness came strange shapes. Blurry lines that slowly formed an image around me. I was standing in the middle of an empty street. Even if easily recognizable as a street, it had, just like a dream, strange features to it. If I had to describe it in one sentence, I'd say it looked to be drawn by a child. There wasn't a single break or hole in the black pavement beneath my feet. The lines separating both lanes were perfectly squared, colored, and in distance of each other. There wasn't a single car in sight. The sun was standing right above me, so not a single thing would cast a big shadow. On the just as meticulous-looking sidewalks, there were people. People who moved like robots. Their movements were looped endlessly. Every step, every arm swing, even the blinking. Even stranger, I soon realized it was the same 10 people passing me by every few steps I took. I passed the same building, a small brick house right next to a 5-story apartment complex, for the 3rd time before I tried talking to one of those people. An old lady, hunched forward walking with a stick, was the first option. Her eyes didn't register me. Neither did her ears when I called out to her. She just kept walking. It was pretty clear that this place would not be welcoming. I was something close to a burglar, breaking into a vault that was the mind of another person. I tried my best to avoid any physical connection with these people. That was until a man following a few feet behind the old lady pretty much ran me over and nearly threw me to the ground. My first impulse was to shout, but I quickly realized it would not have any effect. The guy passed me for the 20th time. He was not what I'd asked looking for. So I kept walking, looking for anything out of the ordinary. The houses were also different from each other. Some looked like they came straight out of small countryside villages, others were giant blocks of concrete stolen out of a city skyline. Again, they had this oversimplified look to them. Yes, there were doors and windows. But the walls were smooth like paper, no scratches, cleaner than any freshly built home. After a few minutes, I tried to open some of those doors. Most lacked a handle, and those that didn't were locked. The same guy rammed me again as I was stepping away from the door. I landed with my back against the wall and scoffed looking at him. That was when I locked eyes with the woman on the other side of the road. She looked at me with an expression of what I could only interpret as sadness and discomfort. But not coming from me, she seemed to want my help. I had seen her in the pictures earlier. It was his late girlfriend. Wait, she walked away, flowing between the people without making any contact. I was nearly thrown to the ground again as I tried to cross the street. I followed her. I was barely able to catch up to her even if I was walking on the road. She opened a door, glanced at me, and disappeared in the darkness on the other side. It slowly closed and didn't give me time to even think about jumping into the abyss. I swung myself between two pedestrians, took a deep breath, and walked in. The moment I entered, the darkness was replaced by bright sky, blinding me until my eyes adapted to it. I was standing on a beach. On my left side was a giant rock wall, at least a few hundred feet high. I heard the sound of birds, but couldn't see any. It was as steep as I could be, like a natural barrier against high waves. On my right side was the sea. Small calm waves of dark blue water crawled over the yellow sand. The footprints in front of me led to the girl. She was stepping on a wooden pathway that went far over the ocean. At the end of it stood a square figure. It had to be the next door. Trying to walk to her, I fell on my knees. There was something holding my ankle. I looked, and it was a hand coming from the ocean. The arm had dozens of elbows and was longer than any snake. Its far end disappeared beneath the water. I dragged and kicked my foot, but it didn't stop dragging me. I stepped on it with all my strength for it to let go. That was when I saw one hand after the other crawling towards me. The whole length of the beach started to shift into human hands dragging themselves to me. The woman waved to me. I started running as fast as I could. I tumbled over the soft sand, but caught myself pushing my weight up with my arms. The sand was so soft compared to the concrete. The arms stretched faster. They were dozens, no hundreds. They were as far as I could see in the distance. The woman was closing up on the door. I kicked a hand away, jumped over the next, but it caught me. I jumped up kicking it away as another grabbed my arm. I grabbed back, ripping it with all my strength. Nothing. I had no time to think as they surrounded me like fleshy worms. I bit into it, ripped the thumb of nearly breaking my teeth. Finally I reached the wood. She stood at the door. 1,000 fingers ripped the wood to pieces. It cracked everywhere, pieces being torn off in all directions. Out of the sea grew more arms, reaching towards the sky. Lines plastered the horizon. Those arms were the sizes of skyscrapers trying to reach the sun. I ran. She disappeared behind the door. It closed slowly. Behind me the wooden path imploded under the pressure. They surrounded me from all sides. All I saw was naked, wet flesh. I grabbed the door, kicked the fingers I felt on my ankle, and jumped. Again I was surrounded by total darkness. The smell of rotten meat lurked in the dense, moist air. My eyes adjusting to the darkness, I realized I was inside a dimly lit room made of steel and rusty edges. The air was so thick, I could taste the mix of decay and death. Never had I smelled that before. Not even the stench of a human corpse could come close to this. I held my nose looking around. In the dark corridor to my left, I recognized the shape of the woman. Then she walked beneath a light bulb with her back turned to me. Chains hung from the ceilings. She avoided them just like she did with the people on the street. Following her, I tried to do the same. What if those chains snatched me like the hands on the beach? I couldn't bite through those. Feeling that I still had blood running down my chin from the bite I took there, I tried getting some off me using my shirt. The taste of cold blood in my mouth, mixed with the scent of rotting flesh and metal, I started to feel more and more dizzy. Like the air around me pushed me down to the ground. Every few steps, I could again see the woman walking beneath a light bulb. She distanced herself more and more. I went faster, breathing heavy, feeling my lungs only take half the air that they did before. It was only now that I saw that the corridor was shrinking. It became impossible to follow the girl and avoid the chains as the walls came down on me. Thank God they didn't grab me and rip me apart. But they weighed heavy on me and slowed me down. The ceiling slowly shrank too. I soon had to hunch down to keep going. She was still in sight. Even she slowed down as she also couldn't avoid the chains. The air got thicker, moister, the walls rustier. I had to get down so deep that I could touch the ground with my hands. Sounds echoed from all directions. The chains became less and less. The entirely rusted walls, ceiling and ground became what I could only describe as squishy and soft. They became skin. I was crawling on all fours now as I followed the solace of the woman's shoes in front of me. Hand prints formed in the skin as screams came from all around. The hands pushed me from all directions. The air was as thick as tar, and I was gasping with every short distance I gained. I was pushed down and crawled with all the strength I had. I was drowning in flesh and rust. I reached out my hand as far as I could, pushing forward with my toes. Nothing something. It was a door handle. I pulled myself forward. The screams became a muffled mess of terror. My lungs were crushed under the weight on my back. I was a sinking ship reaching the bottom of the ocean. I pulled with all the willpower I possessed, screaming as my head reached the darkness. It swallowed me, ripping me out of the flesh tunnel into its black maw. I fell on the ground gasping for air. It was breathable again. Laying on my back, I rejoiced, not knowing that true nightmare had just begun. It took a few moments until my legs would let me stand up again. Again, I stood in a dark room, but light shone from another room next to me. The path between the two was covered with thick, stained plastic curtains. The sound of a mowing cow echoed through it, followed by a metallic sound. Then I heard it, this horrifying scream. It sounded like a high-pitched scream of a drowning person. Painful, but full of rage. The curtains flopped as the scream faded. Then another metallic sound, mixed with heavy steps. My heart jumping out of my chest, I slowly approached the curtains. Crouched down, I pushed one aside with my finger, getting a glimpse of what was on the other side. I was never very religious, but if hell existed, you could find this room right in the middle of it. The thing was about 7 foot tall, naked, and with a skin made of scar tissue from head to toe. Only a single eye, opened as far as possible with mouth and nose covered with a thick layer of skin. Around its neck was a chain, dragging behind it the bodies of 3 people. Also chained on the height of the neck, there was an old man, a young boy, and at last, her. Their eyes were opened as wide as possible with tears running down their cheeks. They looked around, but their bodies were limp. With every step, it ripped open the skin on its own throat, drastically twitching and making painful squeaking sounds. In its hand was a captive bolt pistol. No, it was fused to its hand. The room was a labyrinth of squares. The squares were always made out of 4 shoulder-high cow cages. One was lying dead on the ground as the creature approached the next. It held up the pistol, held it against the animal's forehead, and pulled the trigger. The cow gave one last painful scream as it fell to the ground, twitching and hitting the steel cage with its still moving hooves. The creature screamed, seemingly imitating the dying animal. It threw its head up, and the skin layer on its mouth was sucked inwards like a plastic film in a vacuum. It was choking, throwing its head and arms around, ripping the chain around its neck again, and dragging the 3 people attached to it through the blood. Quickly I turned around, just to realize that the room I was standing in had shrunk to the point that there was barely 3 feet of space between me and the wall. I had no other choice but to enter that room. Looking through the gap again, I waited for the moment the creature faced away from me. Crouched down, I tried to pass the plastic curtains without them making too much sound. Once inside, I quickly made my way behind one of the cages. I could sense where the thing was going, as its painful shrieks and the clanging of the chains were way louder than the panicking cows. Another metallic sound followed by the sound of a dying animal. It screamed again. With all my might, I peeked around the corner. The creature was looking at the twitching cow, while its hoofs hit the cage. If it had both eyes, it would surely have seen me, but I stood in its blind spot. The 3 people chained to the creature were still limp, but their eyes were fixated on me with looks of fear and panic. Something else caught my attention, as I felt the snout of a cow rubbing against my hand. It too was looking at me, and the one next to it too. Everything except the creature was fixated on me. I knew it wouldn't stay like that for long. I heard it moving further away from me. The piece of metal I was holding seemed to move. The cages were only closed by a rusty door bolt. Taking another peek around the corner showed the creature continuing on its way. Further back, just about 2 cages further than its last victim, there stood something different in a cage. It was a bull. There was no way I could beat this thing hand to hand. And there was nothing in sight I could use as a weapon. I had to be quick. The thing shot the cow right next to the bull. It would be next. While it screamed again, I opened the cages to the 2 animals next to me. Opening the rusty doors made a hurtful squeaking sound. But under its screams, it didn't sense the escaping cows. It slowly held up the bolt pistol. The cows walked between the cages next to me. As I saw my last chance fleeting away, I did the only thing that came to my mind. I screamed. The chains rattled aggressively for just a second, then it was silent. My panicked breathing was louder than everything surrounding me. The faint sound of something being dragged across the floor approached. I hid behind the corner as a crippled hand the size of my torso passed over me. Then, in total silence, a giant mass flew towards the cows next to my, followed by the most agonizing, painful screeching I had ever heard. It attacked the cows like a rabid dog in the form of a giant burn victim. The rifle went off over and over again. I slipped through the gap between the beast and the cages next to my. I turned and the creature, now covered in blood and intestines, rushed behind me with the speed of a Bengal tiger. It kicked my legs away with its giant claw and pulled forward the bolt pistol. I crawled backwards as the hole of the gun approached my face. I held up my arms. Then, a scream. It clicked again and again, the bolt shooting in and out, if the gun as its lanky finger pushed the trigger. Not even a foot away from my face, it shot and shot, but they didn't land. It screamed and shrieked in rage as we both saw the people attacked to its chains were holding onto a cage. It threw itself back, ripping them off the cage as it ran to the bull. I heard its steps behind me as I ripped open the cage. The bull kicked against the gate so hard it threw me away as it, in return, charged the beast. They ran into each other with the force of 2 trains colliding. I stood up, dizzy as I hit my head hard falling down. The rifle went off again and again. The bull was already dead, but both its long horns pierced the creature against a cage. It shot and shot until the bull's head was only mush, its screams slowly becoming weaker. I stepped forward, looking at the chained people. The creature's screams became cries. Its anger seemed to fade as sadness replaced it. It held up the weapon in my direction, pulling the trigger a few times until its arm collapsed. Its eyes slowly closed and it stopped choking. I again looked at the people. Thank you. They didn't respond, but their tears disappeared. The surrounding walls slowly became blurry. I guessed it had worked. All it had to do now was die. This was the last place I wanted to be stuck in. Darkness slowly ate away the cages as I picked up the rifle and held it against my head. I looked at the people one last time. I am so sorry. I pulled the trigger.